So good morning, and on behalf of the Lewis Stokes Midwest Regional Center of Excellence, we welcome you to today's session entitled LSAMP Special Issue in Frontiers. My name is Dr. Dorinda Gallant, and I will serve as the session moderator. I am pleased to be here today as I am connected to the LSAMP program as a director of the Ohio LSAMP and the co-PI. Just a few housekeeping items before introducing the speakers. The session is being recorded and will be made available for viewing through the Wooya app next Wednesday. We ask you to please provide your feedback about today's session in the post-session survey. And if you have any questions for the presenters and those questions are within the 10 minutes of their presentation, you may ask those questions at that time. Otherwise, questions will be held until the end of the session. The session is scheduled to take 1 hour, and it's imperative that we stay within time. So if we run out of time for the Q&A at the end of the session, we encourage you to use the discussion board to continue the conversation or reach out to the presenter versus via the app. And so each presenter will have 10 minutes. Dr. Alec Gates will lead this informal information sharing session, and 4 manuscripts will be featured. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Gates.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And thanks everybody for coming today. I know this is, at least in the East, it's a pretty Sunday morning, so it's kind of a tough one to, yeah, maybe other places not so nice. But anyway, so I appreciate you all coming. And just to give you a little background on this, we are, a lot of people are writing proposals. And I know I came from sciences, and you always wanted to be careful when you got to a panel because, you're going to have a bunch of important people in your area. And if you didn't cite their paper in your proposal, it was always held against you. And so LSAMP has always been a little bit tough because, it doesn't say you Google LSAMP and you really don't find many papers. And so that was, one of the motivations for this was that, I want to be able to have people find what's being done at other LSAMPs across the United States and be able to then think if they want to adopt it or, at least acknowledge it when they were writing their proposal so they don't get nicked on the by their panels. But in the other thing was that for, 4 years ago, the senior alliances all had a new charge put on them that they were supposed to do real research on what they were doing rather than it just be a kind of a servicing the students type thing. Now you had to add that research component. So all that research was going to start maturing and coming to fruition right about now. So everything kind of came together at the same time where we're at the 30th anniversary. And people are going to have to start doing research with their LSAMPs. So let's put together something where, not only you can see what other people are doing, you can have reference lists from everybody's papers to see where they found other things that other LSAMPs have done, but doesn't say LSAMP in the title. And if you go on, on any of these search engines, they don't find them. So now we'll have everything put together so people can really advance what they're doing in LSAMPs and be able to write more competitive proposals. So that was kind of it. And I had just done a collection I'm a geologist by trade. So we did one at the Journal of Geoscience Education on diversity and inclusion in the geosciences that was well received and really spread across the profession. So with that positive feedback, I went to the LSMRCE, and though they probably thought I was crazy to begin with, I said, hey, it would be a great idea. So they actually went through and we got it. And, I had to go and look through a lot of journals. And before I could find one that would actually sponsor this, because normally the best you can hope for is to get 8 papers into a special issue. And that was the best I could come up with, except, and then there was a couple of them that were really kind of off the beaten track that I really wanted to go for something that was a little more popular so that it would appear in more libraries. So Frontiers in Education, the reason was, I guess it was more process of elimination. So, and I believe me, I tried everybody to see where I could go for the best one. They're kind of new. Frontiers is a huge journal that's been around forever, one of the top journals. But in education, this is new. So we're kind of hopefully it'll take off as big as their other areas, Frontiers in chemistry and Frontiers in physics. I have got Frontiers in everything. So the Frontiers in Education is rather new. So we're going to be one of their big stars on this. So we put out, and thanks to the LSMRCE decided to say, they said, yep, this is a great idea, let's adopt it. And so we put out all of the invitations and things like that went through LSMRCE to all of the LSAMPs and everything else. And of course, without Deb Cole, we never would have even gotten this off the ground. So she did most of the startups on getting in contact with people, keeping track of everything. But after that, we got a huge turnout. Surprisingly and pleasantly surprised. We had a lot of people who were interested. So and we fielded questions all over the place. So there was even more people who were really excited about this. But there was something like 33 or 34 people who actually sent in a letter of intent that they were going to submit a paper. So that's a good number. And we wound up getting 27 papers submitted. So it was huge. And in the end, some of them backed out. There was a few that didn't make it. But we also have 17 at this point. It looks like that's maybe where it will end. We're cutting it off at October 30th. So that will end it. And so we have 17 papers that they already published. They publish them online as soon as they come up. But the whole volume will be wrapped up. We're going to put a preface together that we're writing. And I see Kim on the line now. So she will be writing that in addition to us. And so I want to thank first, we have some great editors. So I was the whatever you call it, senior guest editor. But we also had Kim Nguyen is a co-editor, as is Chris Batanga, as is Bonita London and Juan Gilbert. So Bonita's from Stony Brook and Juan is from Florida. And, Kim is, of course, from IUPUI and Chris is from Chicago State. So we had some really great editors that did a champion job and figured their way through the Frontier system, which sometimes is a little bit, I could see all the people who put them in are all smiling now. Sometimes is a little bit challenging. I think they have a few years to get all the kinks worked out of that. But nonetheless, this is how it turned out. And so we're already getting phenomenal response to this. And we've got, Kim looked it up this morning and said that we had over 18,000 viewers onto our papers so far. So really, really exciting. This is really exciting thing and a perfect timing because it's going to be, for the 30th anniversary. And we want this then to be a resource for all LSAMPs across, the country and from now and in the future to be able to use this volume. And so I really want to thank, all of the editors who worked with me. I want to especially thank Deb Cole and also but I want to also thank all of the authors who did a great job, wrote some great papers, and you're going to see some really fantastic stuff coming out of this in the future. So what I'm going to do now is we are going to hear great 4 of the authors have agreed to come and talk about the papers that they're putting into this, that they have in this volume. Papers are already accepted, so once you hear their talk, you can go in and look at it right away in Frontiers. And so I want to open that up, but I see a hand up from Kim first, so I guess she wants to say something before we start. Go ahead, Kim.
Good morning, this is Kim. And in addition to thanks the editor, the writer, I want to especially thank the reviewers. This is the peer review journals. And we were sending out for peer review at the time that many of the reviewers deep into teaching and research of the spring semester. And it was very hard. And I appreciate the time the reviewer have put in to give comment and feedback to the author. It is a team project, and we cannot have done it without you. And I appreciate not only the writers, the authors, the editor, but the reviewer. It took me like 10 hours to review and edit and really make sense of what people are writing. So the reviewer is what we are in debt to, and I appreciate having them review this 27 paper that submit to us. Some did not make it, but some have gone through at least 2 recommended for approval from the 2 reviewers. So this is very intensive scholarly screening and supporting process that we're going through. And I appreciate all the participants in this project. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks. Yep, that is true. Reviewers need to be thanked as well. So I apologize for overlooking that. So thank you for picking that up, Kim. And okay, so let's get going, and we're going to hear some of these great papers. So you're going to get an example of a few of these great papers, and I'm sure that'll make you want to run out and go and look at the rest of the volume right away. And so let's get started. And the first one is going to be given by Brene King. It's Improving Academic Self-Concept and STEM Identity through a Research Immersion. And this is Pathways to STEM, RIPS summer program. So Brene.
All right. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. All right, well, thank you all for being here and allowing me to be here, providing this opportunity for me to talk about some work that's coming out of the Kansas LSAMP. And thank you for the great overview. And I'm appreciative of all the folks that were engaged in the process and allowing us to be able to publish this manuscript. So I wanted to begin with an overview, like a visual overview of our Kansas LSAMP. I am from Kansas State University, and we are the lead institution for our LSAMP. Wichita State University is the other baccalaureate granting degree institution, and we then have the remainder of our partners, our community college partners. Our partners in Southwest Kansas are Hispanic serving institutions, and Donnelly College is in Kansas City, Kansas is Hispanic serving as well as minority serving. And to just give you an idea of the spread, Donnelly is our closest partner. They are 2 hours away. Our furthest partners is about 4.5 hours away. So we have a rather kind of spread out alliance. This particular paper is focused on our summer research program. So Research Immersion Pathway System, or RIPS, you'll see it called. It's 8 weeks. This program provides financial support for our students. So that's housing, food, and then they get a separate individual stipend for their participation in our program. And we are specifically working with early career students, as well as students who have not previously engaged with research. And we intentionally set up our requirements that way so we can help engage I think, more closely with our community college population. And knowing that our students were going to have that kind of limited research experience, we've set up some additional program components to help better support our students during that process. So there's a seminar class that I oversee twice a week. And the topics that we talk about are related to engaging in the research process, developing strong relationships with their faculty mentors. And so some of that curriculum is based off of the Entering Research curriculum, if you all are familiar with that, out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And then in addition to kind of our seminar class, we also have opportunities for our RIP students to engage with other summer students. So we have several REUs on our campus, and all of the coordinators of the REUs and other summer programs come together. We talk about what we're doing with each of our different cohorts and find ways for our students to engage with each other over the course of the summer. And the outputs for our program are students write a research abstract, they create a poster, and they also present that poster to our campus community. So for this particular paper, we were looking at our cohorts from 2014 to 2019. So the past 5 years, we had 53 students participate over that time. And you can see that our demographics are very representative of the institutions that we are working with, our partner institutions, with the majority of our partners, I should say our participants, being from community colleges, and also recognizing that the majority of our students are first generation students as well. And so within our paper, we were looking at self-concept and STEM interest and identity. And so we administered retrospective surveys for each of our cohorts, as well as performed focus groups over multiple years with our students. And in looking at our survey data for our self-concept, our survey data, we saw significant gains over our 8-week program for our students. And so we had survey items such as, I have the capacity of achieving success in my education, or I'm confident in my academic knowledge and abilities. And when we got into our conversations with students for our focus groups, out of the analysis, some of the things that we noted were strong conversations and descriptions of mindset. That wasn't something that we were initially kind of looking for, but our students really described when we were asking them, about what a good scientist looks like, or what are the characteristics that they feel that they need. They talked about patience and determination and things along those lines. We also kind of noted this change of perception due to social comparisons. So in many traditional academic settings, there are cues for students that they receive, and a lot of times they're ambiguous, right? So I'm in a classroom and I'm taking a test and I see my peers getting up ahead of me, and sometimes that can feed into their sense of ability, whether that's positive or negative. What we wanted to do with our program is we wanted to shine a light on the process of research and what it takes and how you can contribute to that. So we weaved in a lot of programmatic things that allow students to practice talking about their research, being able to get constructive feedback from their peers. And within that, we just heard a lot of great comments about that and kind of what they were noting among their peers. When we get into our STEM interest and identity, again, our survey data showed significant gains with survey items such as, I enjoy talking about my science or math with others, or when it comes to scientific knowledge, I can compete at the highest level. And so we saw gains with our students over that 8 weeks and kind of their kind of interest in their identity along those ways, those concepts. When we got into our focus groups in these areas, we definitely saw how important a supportive environment was to driving interest and performance for our students, and as well as their engagement with the research process. And again, that opportunity to communicate their research with others helped our students really more fully recognize and express their interests in STEM areas. We also saw that having a positive research experience, at least for our early career students, may be important than the perfect research match. A lot of times with our community college students, many of them are not even clear about what the kind of research and even major opportunities are at our four-year institutions. And so they may just be interested in engineering. And so on the back end, we really try to ensure that we have some supportive mentors to kind of help guide students during that process and help elucidate maybe more of their interest along the way. So project impact, 95% of our community college participants have transferred to a four-year institution. We recognize that's a small end, but we are very happy and proud of those numbers. And our one-year retention rate post-transfer, so our students transfer, say, to K-State or a four-year institution, a year afterwards, 85% are still retained. And I wanted to note that students don't have to be committed to K-State in order to participate in our program. We just want them to have an interest in STEM. It's really what we're looking for. And our other requirements are relatively, I think they have to have algebra and one lab class. So there's not a huge hurdle as far as what we're looking for on the academic side either. Again, to ensure that we can really have our community college students engaged in that process. And you can see our graduation rates over our various cohorts. The average is about 80% of them graduating with their bachelor's degree in a STEM field. And so all of these kind of going back to the connection to our LSAMP, we view our summer program as a recruitment opportunity. We have students that are staying on our four-year institution for an extended period of time, really getting a sense of the campus as well as the community, which is most of the time different from where they are coming from. We also see this as retention, as far as them being able to engage with different individuals on campus that can help them once they transfer, or having discussions about if they don't come to K-State, how and things that they should look for at whatever other four-year institution they're going to. And then just overall having that supporting students over that transfer. It's one of the many no's, right, that we have when we're looking at students transferring from a community college to a four-year institution, just being part of that process and having that additional support. And that is all I have for my presentation. Thank you. I'm not sure about time and where we are for questions.
We're good. Thank you very much, Renee. That's interesting stuff. Okay, so we do have time for questions to ask her now before we get to the end. So if anybody has any questions, let's hear them.
I have a question. Renee, I found your presentation very interesting. Could you tell us more about the instruments that you used?
So our retrospective survey, we had kind of various components, not just about our concept and interest and identity, but we also had, our programmatic things. Are you thinking of specific items, or what more would you kind of like to know about that?
Did you make the items? Did you create the items yourself based on your needs, or did you use them from existing instruments, or?
Yes. So our evaluators pulled items from some existing instruments. So if you go to, I don't know all of our instruments, there are a couple, but we do have that listed in our paper, as Dr. Gates mentioned. And so if you go into our article, we have all of the references about the instruments that we pulled some of our items from.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I think we have to we'll have time at the end to ask more questions, but I think we have to stick to the schedule. So I'm going to move it up to the next one, since we're at 11:25 now. So the next one, we are pleased to have Bethany Sansing Helton, and she is going to talk about increasing STEM transfer readiness among underrepresented, minoritized two-year college students, examining course-taking patterns, experiences, and interventions. So Bethany.
Hi, can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak about this article. Wow, Brené's stuff was awesome. It's hard to follow that. So it's a very long title. I'm at Madison Area Technical College in Wisconsin. We're part of the WisCamp Alliance. But our project was actually centered specifically at Madison College, focusing on our two-year students. So I co-wrote this article with my co-PI, Dr. Chuck Benton, who's in the audience, and also Dr. Gail Coover, who was the former lead for the WisCamp Alliance. And we submitted, with Gail's support, we submitted a special project request with LSAMP to create this program specifically for our students. And so this article talks about that project within our school. And I have never done research before, and this was the first peer-reviewed article that I've ever done in this area, and the reviewers were completely amazing, and along with the co-authors as well. And so I encourage you all to read the whole article because there's so much in it, and I can't possibly talk about it all in 8 minutes. So just an overview of the project. The WisCamp Scholars project just helps 4 or 5 students every year at our school. And that's the box in blue in the middle of the screen here. And what we did was we created this, this sort of wraparound project called the Inspire Scholars to provide access to some of the resources in our WisCamp project, and also keep our students engaged, because we found a lot of our WisCamp scholars, they were supposed to just be in the program for 1 year and then transfer. And a lot of the students, after spending a year in the project, said, actually, I'd like to take some more classes at the college before I transfer. And we had no way to sort of continue supporting them. And so that was part of where we were coming from. And so we created this sort of multi-tiered level, which we borrowed quite a bit of this design from the UW Milwaukee WisCamp project that they do. And so we had 69 students in this overall project over the course of 3 years, and 20% of those students ended up in more than one role in the project, which was part of our goal. And 36% of the students participated in it for more than 1 semester as well. So basically what we were trying to do was we were trying to reduce barriers through expanded eligibility in the project. So in order for students to participate, they had to be underrepresented. They had to be enrolled at least half-time, which again, WisCamp was full-time. So this allowed half-time students to enroll. We also had a lower GPA requirement of 2.25. And they also could be really early on in their math journey. So at the 2-year college space, over half our students place at the level of elementary algebra or below, which is 2 levels below college algebra. And so our WisCamp Alliance students couldn't even apply to the program till they were in college algebra. And so we were missing a lot of our students because only 12% of the students that started elementary algebra ever even make it to college algebra. So with those kinds of numbers, we're really trying to sort of like broaden the net of who could participate. So we ended up with 69 students. Some of the information about them is on the right-hand side there. 61% first generation, almost 20% of them were enrolled less than full-time. And 36% of our scholars started in the program in remedial math. But you can see 2/3 of them had taken some remedial math somewhere in their path. So that was our population of students. I'm not going to read all of these. This is in the article as well. We provided a lot of different supports for the students and to try and create this community for our students to help them be successful. And I'll loop back to some of the most important ones that are on this list. But so what I really wanted to talk about was our outcomes, because this is super exciting for me. The paper actually has slightly different numbers because that's from February, and we're writing our final report for the project right now, and so I re-pulled the transfer data, and 58% of our students have transferred successfully to a 4-year college, the majority in STEM. And you can see that 65% of the students that have successfully transferred had some remedial math in their background. And so I just really love that. I am a math faculty member at Madison College. And so seeing these students successfully transfer is, they're bucking the odds. So it was very, very exciting outcome for the scholars. So we also tried to figure out if the program helped them in ways that were considered non-cognitive, and so what we did is we worked with a survey instrument that Dr. Shuli Wang created from UW-Madison as part of a STEM transfer project that she had done. And we modified it for our project, and it has these 6 different scales that we looked at: math self-efficacy, science self-efficacy, support for transfer, transfer information acquisition, transfer capital, and transfer self-efficacy. And we did a pre-survey right when they started the project, and then a post-survey. And we saw statistically significant increases in 4 of the different areas, and 2 of them having the largest effect. And so the 2 that had the largest effect were the transfer information acquisition and the transfer self-efficacy. And we do have in the article, we have the list of all the questions, the matched questions that were asked that we used for that table. So the transfer information acquisition was trying to understand how familiar students were about different resources we have at the college for supporting them in their transfer process. And then the transfer self-efficacy was actually just a single question. And so both of those, we saw increases through our project. And so just like briefly, what we really felt like were some of the key components to support those students was really helping the students with their sense of belonging and with their STEM identity, this feeling that, yes, I am a scientist. And so the way we did that is we had study jams that met inside our college's STEM center, where the students worked together studying. And we also provided all those different roles for the students so we could meet them where they were at. We also had biweekly meetings that were led by the peer leader. So they were led by other students. And we had faculty mentoring. So they had these connections with faculty. And so a lot of connections were provided for students. And again, the article goes into a lot more detail about all of that. And so it was really about supporting students holistically through community, through mentoring, and really ensuring that they take and successfully complete multiple STEM courses each semester, which I talk more about in the article. But this idea of the students, if they want to go into STEM, really need to take a lot of STEM. And because especially at the community college, we have advisors that are like, oh, you seem a little nervous. Maybe you should just take math and not science. And it's like, no. We need the students to take math and science at the same time, and we need to support them to be successful in it. And so it just kind of hammering that home to the advisors through this project was really important. So also another article from Dr. Shule Wang, you can see in my paper, we reference her a lot. She's amazing. But so this idea of counter momentum friction, things that sort of prevent our students from successfully moving on, and how I just address how our project worked at each of these counter momentum frictions. So we addressed financial barriers through student stipends. We addressed lack of clear pathways with a partnership with UW-Madison, our #1 transfer institution. We also addressed lack of advising through having this mentor connections and these biweekly meetings. And we also worked with our faculty mentors to try and help them understand some of the issues our students faced. And so all of that ended up with this wonderful program. And so again, co-authors, totally amazing. There's a lot more in the article. And I just really wanted to thank the students, inspiring, dedicated students of this project. So I think I'm right at time. So if you have questions, I'll stick around to the very end.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we are just to try to stay on time, but we probably will have time at the end for people to ask other questions. So please stay around. So I'm going to go to the next talk, which we have Zakiah Wilson Kennedy here to give the talk, and it is on international research experiences in the development of minority scientists. So Zakiah or Zakiah.
Thank you so very much for organizing this section, and also the Herculean effort to help us to have a special issue to publish the work that we've been conducting both in my institution and also in other institutions, LSAMP institutions across the country. My research primarily focuses on the studies of practices that broaden the participation of individuals from groups historically underrepresented in STEM. Recently, one of my graduate students and a colleague and I published a peer-reviewed publication on the role of international research experiences in the development of minority undergraduate scientists in the Frontiers in Education special issue. All right. So what do I mean by underrepresentation? Specifically, we're talking about how representation in science and engineering occupation compares to the US population. White and Asian Americans have representation within the science and engineering workforce at rates higher than their representation in the US population, whereas African Americans, Latino, Latina Americans, Native Americans, Alaskan Natives, Pacific Islanders have much less representation within the science and engineering workforce comparable to their representation in the US population. Specifically, underrepresentation of these groups in the STEM workforce, meaning they comprise about 33% of the population versus 13% of the STEM workforce, is what we mean when we're specifically speaking to underrepresentation. All right, and so many policymakers and educational leaders have focused on diverse approaches to address the cultivation of talent across all of our citizenry. In higher education, high impact educational practices have been adopted to improve student success and participation in STEM. Within the STEM disciplines, in particular at the undergraduate level, hands-on learning experiences through undergraduate research, communication, or writing intensive efforts, and internships have been shown to have remarkable efficacy in promoting retention and success. For students from groups historically underrepresented in STEM, undergraduate research opportunities can be particularly beneficial. And you hear some of those thoughts throughout our conference, both from the voices of the students sharing the impact of those experiences, as well as researchers trying to understand more about those experiences. And a lot of research has been done on undergraduate research experiences and how they support students in identity development and a host of other kinds of things. So I've been interested in studying these high impact practices and the impact of these on students from groups that have been historically underrepresented within our disciplines. Beyond studying a single practice, I've been interested in the layering of practices, right? And so this is what happens when you add one or two or more of those high impact practices together and look at student engagement in those. As an example, research experiences in a global or international setting. This brings together more than one practice, right? So we know that international or global experiences have been reported to have positive impacts on student success. However, very few minority students, based upon data that we've collected on US study abroad programs and efforts, very few minority students have an opportunity to engage in these study abroad experiences, and far fewer more actually participate in international research experiences. And so really trying to investigate this area where there's limited student engagement, particularly minority student engagement, and trying to understand more about how this impacts students has been an area of interest for us. All right, so the purpose of our study was to explore the development of minority student science abilities and confidence after participating in an international research experience. And we've also explored how international research experiences develop the participants' intercultural competence and awareness of global research and collaboration. We had three main research questions: how are international experiences contributing to the educational experiences of minority STEM undergraduates? How do participants describe the growth in intercultural competence after participating in one of these international research sites? And how do minority students' participation in undergraduate international research programs support the actualization of becoming a scientist? For this study, we used as our conceptual framework this integration of social cognitive career theory, science, identity, and intercultural competencies. Noting that students enter into educational experiences with the wealth of capital, we seek to understand how engaging in these high impact practices, specifically undergraduate research and global experiences, impact their identity development as global scientists, impacting their self-efficacy and expectations in their academic and career pathways in STEM. For this study, we utilized qualitative research methods. Our participant sample included science majors who participated in the international research program during their undergraduate academic studies. The immersive experience includes 10 weeks abroad studying research or conducting research in either France or Belgium. 8 students participated in one-on-one structured, semi-structured interviews. Notably, this France-Belgium International REU recruits primarily from LSAMP institutions. So these were primarily LSAMP students who were engaging in this research. We had a very secure interview protocol where we looked at the selection of the undergraduate major, the current career and educational path, questions around their program experience, the perspective on global research, and reflections of growth on their research abilities and intercultural competence as a result of having participated in this experience. For the study, each transcript was open coded to develop a preliminary code book. To further develop the code book, the transcripts underwent several rounds of axial coding. Using that axial coding, connections were made between the open codes to identify major codes. Through the analysis, multiple sources of data were actively examined to develop an in-depth understanding of each case individually in relation to the research questions. Once the code book was finalized, the codes were grouped into categories and emergent themes were recorded. Throughout the data analysis process, researchers employed member checking and peer debriefing throughout the coding process to make sure that the data was trustworthy. Some of our major findings, and I encourage you to read the paper, which has been published in Frontiers in Education, but some of the things that were occurred were an increased confidence in their science identity and abilities. And here's a quote that I'd like to share with you all. I think France really just taught me it's okay to love what you love. I look at all of these other people that love what they love and just seeing them speak at seminars. We had like weekly seminars and I had to present at once. It was like, wow, here I am, a Black girl from the States. You know, I had people tell me you bring your full self. And frankly, I'm like, who else am I supposed to be? Like the white doctors? I'm not white, I'm Black. I mean, I have personality and I'm in STEM, you know, we exist. I'm not about putting myself in a box. France taught me, be yourself. That's powerful. Another theme that emerged through our study, gain and strengthen skills necessary to be a successful researcher. And a quote that represents this is, I think, that one of the major things that opened my eyes on what it means to be a scientist is not just having the confidence to step in the lab, it's really having that follow through and being able to write about something to an unknown audience. That's when I understood the skill sets of a scientist. It's not just the lab and understanding the science, it's really having that academic voice. Can you convince people that you know what you know? I also had to present poster presentations, but it was really giving talks and group meetings where I learned more appropriate ways to present your work. It's something I never had too much of that experience before. Immersive experiences that were extremely impactful. A third thing, recognize the influence of international exposure on their growth personally and professionally. And the quote that represents this, science involves a lot of people and everyone needs everyone. Everyone has a part to play. And your background plays a part. I feel like bringing a lot of people from a lot of different countries, you have different perspectives. You have different backgrounds and ways of thinking of new questions. I definitely feel like collaboration and working in different labs in different countries definitely expands how we do science in general. And then the last thing that I'd like to share with you all is they express how monumentally this research opportunity is for all minority students to experience. It definitely changed my path forward. It really helped me to define what I wanted to do and where I am at now. I absolutely would not be here now if I hadn't done that program. I'm really, really grateful for that. So, and to finalize and to kind of close down on some of these discussions, the findings collaborated the substantial contribution of the international research experience on our participants' research of efficacy and science identity development. The students started to recognize the importance and value of international research collaboration with researchers worldwide for the advancement of their respective fields. Many of them, this was their first time viewing themselves as contributing members of a STEM field, not just someone doing like grunt work, but really contributing to the advancement of science. and it illuminated the interplay of each sphere of development supported by the participants' foundation in their global scientific development. There are some implications for practice. I know I'm hitting up towards the end of my 10-minute piece, but I'll just end by saying it was a wonderful opportunity to engage with students who participate in international research and have an opportunity to elevate their voice in sharing what that impact was.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Okay, so I think we're going to have to move on to the last one. So is Jessica Deschler or David Miller here?
No, I am representing them. I am Lynette Mitchell
Okay.
from the same
Great.
LSAMP. Thank you so much.
Okay, go ahead. You're up then. Wait a minute. Let me announce you. So it's supporting student success and persistence in STEM with active learning approaches in emerging scholars classrooms. And
you,
as
Doc.
you saw, it's
Okay.
Lynette Michalik.
Okay. All right. Are we, let me get this
Good.
shared first. And then, oops. Can I share my screen? I don't, I have is the host has disabled this.
Can she be made a?
Just 1 second, please.
Dorinda?
Thank you.
Okay.
Let me try to share the,
Okay, great.
okay, can we see?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. To clarify, I am Lynette Mitchell. I am co-PI of the research study of the KY West Virginia LSAMP. I am standing in for Drs. Miller and Deschler, who were unable to be here today. Our institution is WVU. We actually are part of the larger 10 Institution Alliance. And so, to keep within time, what we're going to talk about is the Emerging Scholars Program, specifically at West Virginia University. That's kind of part of the larger LSAMP. It was developed by Yuri Treisman and described by Sarah in 2001 and Hu et al. In 2008. Treisman recognized in the 1970s that ESPs were something that could be useful in helping students who don't traditionally make it into STEM do well in mathematics classes. So ESPs incorporate active learning strategies, challenging problems, and learning communities into collegiate mathematics courses. The ESP implementations build communities of students around shared experiences and their shared identities. This mitigates the sense of isolation and increases the academic success of underrepresented minority students. It's important to mention that it also offers them an additional opportunity. There's more people that they can go to than just the teacher for help. Students who lack community support in their academic programs might experience isolation and disconnects that pose barriers to their success. We found, for instance, that students who aren't well integrated into the university, particularly underrepresented minority students, rural students, and women, are not as likely to finish. In a community of one's peers, the development of mathematical ideas happens in ways that stem from their cultural similarities. ESP courses, they meet for 2-hour sessions 3 times per week rather than typical 1-hour sessions 4 times weekly. There is no textbook. It is inquiry-based learning, so it is more labor intensive in terms of time. When the class starts, classroom and community norms are created. They create a safe and professional atmosphere that cultivates learning. It's a welcoming and inclusive community. Classroom facilities are configured to optimize the group learning dynamic, and this includes setting up tables and chairs for group work rather than individual desks, creating space for whiteboards, markers, etc. Students work as a group. They derive conceptual ideas from the topics introduced. They build procedural knowledge, give presentations in the class, and take assessments that test procedural and conceptual learning. It's important to mention that the tests that they take are the same ones that are given through the rest of the department. Students engage in small group and whole class discussions and present their work on the board. Within this format of formal presentation and real-time respectful feedback, students can adjust their work towards mathematical accuracy using equal signs, the correct notation, showing sufficient amount of work to support conclusions, and in turn towards mathematical understanding. The focus in an ESP class is more the conceptual knowledge as opposed to memorization of formulas. Here's a sample worksheet that is included in the publication. The theoretical frameworks are the same as those that were mentioned by Dr. Wilson Kennedy and include social cognitive career theory, which is based in part on Tinto's theory of retention. Tinto's theory of retention incorporates both academic and non-academic factors. So SCCT, the non-cognitive factors known to be important in retaining students, are also part of this, and it expands them for use that are groups that are underrepresented in STEM. There's been a lot of studies of underrepresented minority students, some of rural and many of women, specifically in STEM. Tinto's sense of self-efficacy and STEM identity and STEM belonging have important implications for such groups. The ESP programs actually address STEM self-efficacy, STEM identity, and belonging. We conducted surveys and interviews with students. We actually conducted in-depth interviews with approximately 6 current and former recent ESP scholars, and we received survey responses from approximately 25. And ESP scholars indicated that they highly valued the community aspect of ESP, and they found during the pandemic that they really missed it. Every current scholar reported missing it during online instruction, and many of them wished that there were ESP classes for other STEM classes, like science, for instance. Okay, what they did in this study was collect data on the ESP classes from 2009-2019, because you only have one class, it's a rather small sample. 96% of the students in these classes were STEM majors, 67% were engineering, which is typical. Most were freshmen, and 33% were women. They compared this to a larger sample of non-ESP calculus courses during the same time at WVU. That was 6,894 students. 8% of them were underrepresented minority as opposed to 60% for the ESP, and approximately the same amount of women, 30%. First generation is important. This is WVU. It's a very highly rural area. So 24% in ESP calculus identified as first generation and 15% in non-ESP. As mentioned earlier, the exams for all the ESP and other calculus sections were written and administered uniformly. So what they looked at were grades and also retention and passing. So some important information. First of all, high school GPA and prior STEM preparation as measured by ACT math score are higher in ESP calculus students to begin with than they are in non-calculus students. The percent passing is also higher, and the percent retained is higher for the underrepresented minority students. For non-URM students, it's approximately equal. So the results, I know there's a lot to unpack here. So let's make sure that everybody knows that high school prep was higher for the ESP students. So we can't stress enough that that is important. We did find that the difference in the high school GPA and the ACT math score between the underrepresented and non-underrepresented ESP students was lower. So there's a smaller gap for the ESP students than for the non-ESP students in terms of their GPAs. Notice that they're much closer here than they are here. And their ACT math scores are much closer in the ESP versus non-ESP. In the traditional calculus courses, underrepresented students passed at a significantly lower rate. They were retained at a significantly lower rate than non-underrepresented students. ESP calculus, underrepresented students passed at the same rate as their non-underrepresented peers. In ESP calculus, they were retained at the same rate as non-underrepresented students. I'm going to point something out here. Percent passing was 82, 81. This does look about similar. The percent retained is 84% for the non-represented students or non-underrepresented students and 92% for the underrepresented students. I suspect that this probably would have been statistically significantly different had the sample size been somewhat larger. I can't guarantee that. But notice that the gap is larger for the most part in non-underrepresented and underrepresented students for passing in the traditional calculus than for ESP classes. The passing rate was significantly higher for traditional in ESP calculus. The passing rate was significantly higher than for traditional calculus, just in general. In ESP calculus, the retention rate was also significantly higher than for traditional calculus in general. For underrepresented students, the passing rate is significantly higher for ESP and significantly higher for retention as well. So what was concluded was that, in summary, ESP calculus likely positively impacted retention and passing for underrepresented students at West Virginia University. We can kind of be confident in this because notice that there are also non-underrepresented students in there as well that are passing and also being retained at significantly higher rates. But we are continuing to examine data. They also analyzed grade data for students who completed the class for a grade. So if a student got like a W, they didn't include their grades. Grades are on a 4-point scale. The course grade average was similar for underrepresented and non-underrepresented students in ESP calculus, 2.86, 2.83. But in the traditional calculus, underrepresented students had substantially lower grades, and this was statistically significant than non-underrepresented students. 1.72 or 2.2 compared to 2.2. So ESP calculus likely positively impacted grades of underrepresented students as well. Okay, limitations. First of all, the students come in, many of them were LSAMP scholars. They have to maintain a 3.0 GPA. They came in with higher scores. And in 2020, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We're gonna have to end. It's 12 o'clock, so we have to be out by 12. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so unfortunately, we will not have time for questions, but I want everybody to be able to see what a really high quality these papers are. So you saw just 4 examples of what really impressive quality these papers are. And I want, as a homework assignment, I'll have everybody try to go and look at some of these amongst all the other, well, we're up to tens of thousands of people who have. And so please take a look at them, and hopefully this will start more publishing on where LSAMP papers can be identified. And I mean, that's what we were hoping to get with this. This is just the beginning of really some good LSAMP papers. And I encourage you to contact the people who gave great talks, and thank you very much for these wonderful talks that all 4 of you have given. These are just examples of the high quality papers that we have in this volume. So thank you all for participating, and thanks everybody for coming.
And I need to close out too. Thank you, Dr. Gates. So Thank you all to the presenters and those who attended today's session. As a reminder, this session was recorded and will be posted to the WUVA app by Wednesday of next week. Lastly, please complete the post-session survey. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to post it into the chat because the chat has been disabled. But if you go into the app, you will see the link for the session. So I encourage you to please complete that. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.